Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon. Thank you everybody for joining this webinar. My name is Dr. Alam Sher Malik, and along with my team, I run this MEDED webinar series from Malaysia. It is a voluntary activity and there's no institution involved in that. There is no fee for registration or attending these webinars. Now, let me introduce today's speaker. Dr. Rukhsana Hussain Malik is an associate professor of medical education at International Medical School of Management and Science University here in Malaysia. She got her master's in medical education from University of Dundee, and she has a vast experience in the field. Her areas of interest are curriculum development, staff development, and student assessment. For any questions, please type those questions in the chat box and we will try to answer these questions at the end of the session. I would like to invite Dr. Rukhsana Hussain Malik to come and make her presentation. Yes, please.
Assalamu alaikum and very good morning and afternoon, everyone. My name is Rukhsana and I'm going to present this presentation. Many thanks to all of you to come to attend this webinar. Today we are going to discuss about the evolution of the learning outcomes, learning objectives to outcomes, and their significance in the 21st century education, especially in the medical education. Looking at the current situation, where we all know that the current COVID situation has exposed a number of flaws in the health management system, exposing capability, capacity, and competence at all levels. And we all need to relook at our curriculum to align it to the newer demands from medical education system. We all know that the curriculum is very dynamic and very fluid. It is not something which is carved in stone. Minor changes in curriculum is an almost continuous process. However, there comes time when drastic changes are required to be done as a part of the continuous quality improvement. As basic qualified frontline human resource providers, all medical institutes, let's begin with going back to the revolution of the medical education. The first and the foremost and the most powerful document of the last century was the Flexner Report. In 1904, American Medical Association realized that doctors were produced with academic study of 2 to 4 years, given by unqualified part-time doctors with no basic science taught, sometimes without any exposure to medical schools, to the patients in the hospitals, and from medical schools which were mushrooming with no regulation at all. The commission produced its report in 210, popularly known as the Flexner Report, too harsh in its wording, making Harvard as its model transformed the medical education, the way medical education was done throughout the world. It made compulsory 2 years of preclinical basic sciences, which is still adopted in a form or another everywhere in the world, and 2 to 3 years of clinical in hospital settings, where the curriculum is delivered by qualified doctors, not by anyone who is working in the hospital. However, it was not successful in creating a model doctor that community wanted. This was followed by the Ripley's report in 1932, which was the first report which mentioned the word learning objectives. It instructed all the medical schools to develop the learning objectives, not only for the academic content, but also for the other attributes the institute wants its students to excel in, like self-directed learning and the lifelong learning. AAMC in 1984 was still looking for the list of those standardized attributes in all fresh doctors of American medical schools, which was expressed in their document on physician of the 21st century. So from 1932 to 1984, there was still not much work done on the development of the learning objectives. The AAMC report in 1984, that is done. The ACME TRI report in 1992 identified the constraints and difficulties like financial, not enough manpower, lack of faculty time in developing the exact objectives, and teaching and assessing of the students accordingly. The few medical schools which developed their learning objectives produced the documents which weighed in kilos, but was not able to bring any significant change in the product. The Medical School Objective Project, MSOP of 1998, was the first solid document which identified the basic attributes of the medical students under 4 headings: the altruistic, knowledgeable, skillful, and dutiful. They were expressed as medical school's responsibility to be able to demonstrate, the students should be able to demonstrate those attributes to the satisfaction of the faculty when they graduate. Almost at the same time, the Ontario report was published by a committee in Canada, which was formed to find the cause of lack of interest of the community, lack of support of the community to the doctors for the strike which they did in 1987. In 1987, the Ontario physicians went on a strike and nobody appreciated them, nobody were standing behind them. The reason being that the people were not very happy with the physicians at that time. They identified the 8 specific physician roles, which were adopted by all the 5 medical schools of Ontario state, Canada. Almost simultaneously, IIME published its global minimal essential requirement under 7 domains. The Scottish doctor used terms like elements, domains, and learning outcomes. The Scottish doctors use terms like element, domains, and learning outcomes in its classification of the outcomes for the Scottish medical schools, and this is the first time the terminology learning outcomes was used. It came up with 3 elements: what the doctor should be able to do, what the doctor how the doctor approaches his or her practice, and doctor as a professional. And then under all these 3 domains, elements were the domains, and for each domain there were a number of learning outcomes which were specified. Sorry. Okay. Sorry for the computer got a bit stuck. The GMC report of Tomorrow's Doctor in 2003. Remember that GMC was publishing its Tomorrow's Doctor from 1998, and there were multiple editions of it. In 2003, the GMC also came up with the outcomes, which were identified under 7 professional practices the doctors should be able to do, and the learning objectives were given for all of those the professional principles. Practices of the doctors. At the same time, the Boulogne Agreement of 2004 decided that all EU countries should write the learning outcome of their curriculum by the year 2010. So that was the deadline given by the EU countries, because all the people in the EU countries were moving, all the doctors were moving from one country to another, and they wanted to have a standardized curriculum for that. Moving towards the eastern side, in the Singapore published its priorities, outcomes, and standard of medical education report in 2014. The priorities were identified according to the future requirement of the medical systems in Singapore. The Singapore has 3 medical colleges, and they standardized the curriculum of those 3 medical colleges. 70% of the curriculum was given by this committee, and 30% was left to the individual institute to add their own attributes into that curriculum. This curriculum was comprised of 6 outcomes, and for each outcome there were a number of standards which were identified. The General Medical Council UK produced another document in 2018 which is called as the New Doctor. So the Tomorrow Doctor now is being replaced by the New Doctor. It identified, going back to the basics, of 3 basic outcomes of professional values and behavior, professional skills, and professional knowledge, like the Bloom's taxonomy. So the outcome will be on the knowledge, skills, and attitudes or behavior component of this. And they have identified the different capabilities which the students will do under all these outcomes. So the document is published in 2018, and most of the medical schools in UK are following this current document. Moving from objectives to outcomes, what is the difference between them? Objectives are the expected or intended learning outcomes which the university or the institute wants. They are clear and conscious statements that describe what you intend your students to learn by the end of the course or a session. They describe the essential learning the learner should achieve and can reliably demonstrate at the end of the session. And they are the intended purposes and expected result of teaching and assessment. However, the mastery of the individual objective does not necessarily mean that the doctor will be able to integrate them to perform the clinical complex task. That was the drawback of the objectives, that we think that we have given enough to the students because these are all intended outcomes, but it does not mean that all those outcomes which have been delivered as an isolated facts, the students will be able to make a sense of it and can deliver them as in a holistic approach in a clinical situation. While the learning outcomes are seen in the context of complex tasks where knowledge, skills, and attitudes are all integrated. So the learning outcomes are not written as a knowledge or a skill or an attitude component. They are always a mixture of all those. And the outcome is the successful demonstration of achievement of this competence, which can be assessed and which should be assessed at the end of the course. The competence-based education moves from objectives to outcome-based education, focusing on the end product, emphasizing broad overview of what is expected by the students and identifying the key areas to be mastered. So that brings in the concept of the core curriculum into the medical education. Using learning outcomes also leads to a common sense curriculum design by specifying what students are to learn and what the end product is capable of doing. It does not involve what is the process of achieving to that level. Using learning outcomes leads to a more student-centered approach because the learning outcome is what the students are able to do. So all the responsibility is now on the students to make sure that they have attained that expected levels or the expected standards of the institute. They are the statements which explain to how the students know, understand, and do upon the completion of a process of learning. These are the broad statement of what is achieved and assessed at the end of the course of the study, written in a specific terms. They are reference for standard and quality. This is what we show to our stakeholders, that this is what we expect our students to do at the end of their graduation. Students take more responsibility of their learning when they know the level of standards they need to achieve. What are the differences between the objectives and outcomes? Very important. The objectives are extensive and abundant. I told you that in some of the institutes there were 808 objectives which were identified with so many verbs used over there that it was difficult to distinguish between what verb means what. while the outcomes are broad statement, maximum 8 to 12, but these are all hot outcomes, higher order thinking outcomes, not the lower order thinking outcomes. They are detailed specification objectives, while the outcomes are the broad overviews. Objectives are classified into discrete areas of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, while outcomes are the competencies, which are the integration of all those three elements. This informs what the teacher plans to teach and must teach, while the outcomes inform what the student would be able to do as a result of the learning experience. The objectives may not be measurable, but the outcomes are always measurable and should be measured. They represent what is intended to achieve at the end of the course modules, the objectives, while the outcome represent what is achieved, so that we can tell our stakeholders that this is the standard to which we have worked on. May not bring any change to the behavior. Objectives might not be measurable. As they are not measurable, so you wouldn't know whether there is any change in the behavior that has occurred, while the outcomes always manifest as a change in a behavior. Why we need the learning outcomes? As a reference for standard, for accreditation purposes, we know that that's exactly what we are doing, and to achieve those, what are the teaching learning methods and the assessment and the procedures which are adopted. Represent as a shift from a traditional teacher-centered learning to a student-centered approach for the learning, because now it is the responsibility of the students to achieve those outcomes. Improves the course design and the quality in higher education. It is the essential building block for transparency in what the universities are doing. So the curriculum is wide open to everybody who wants to know about the curriculum of that institute, that this is the main standards for which the institute is striving for. It allows for diverse assessment practices which are available to connect curricula to the new content. From the student's perspective, the curricula becomes more open. The student knows exactly what they have to learn. They learn more effectively, more efficiently. They have the clear ideas of the assessment methods and the tools. They know their strengths and weaknesses, and they know exactly what they have accomplished. They provide a useful guide to inform potential candidates and employers about the attributes the graduate will possess at graduation. So outcomes are usually at the level of the graduation. What is the significance of learning outcomes from the academic perspective? It focuses on the learner's behavior that is to be changed. The teachers know exactly how to develop their instructional material. They select their appropriate teaching strategy for each and every learning outcome. This guides precisely what the particular activity is designed to achieve. They assess in setting the examination based on the specified material which has been delivered, and it ensures appropriate evaluation strategies according to the program which have been identified. What are the characteristics of the learning outcomes? It should reflect the vision and mission of the institute. It could be realistic, clear, and unambiguous in its wording. It should be specific and address defined areas of competence. They are sufficient in number for effective learning and adequate assessment of achievement. They are attainable in terms of the student's ability, their initial skill sets, their previous learning experiences, and the time available to learn. So that is why you have to plot them according to the time spent in the classroom and how much time you are giving to the students to do the self-directed learning. It is applicable in terms of their needs and frequency of usage. It is stated in terms of expected student performance, not the intended learning. To make student learning desired outcome in a reasonable, effective way, it engages the student in the teaching learning processes to a specified standard. Can I request the people who are there, please mute yourself. Thank you. The learning outcomes have 3 distinguishing characteristics. Why Nova, please mute yourself. They have 3 distinguishing characteristics. The specific action must be done by the learners. The specific action by the learner must be observable and measurable. Should be student-centered. On successful completion of the module, the student will be able to, that is the term used over this will is very specific, they should be able to. And on successful completion of the module, you would be able to, not should be able to. Should is maybe or maybe not, while the would is specific. The construction of the learning outcomes follows the taxonomy of the educational objectives. There are a number of taxonomies which we are going to discuss in a little while. They define the level of performance, at which level of competencies these learning outcomes should be achieved. And think before constructing your learning outcomes, what information students really need to learn, how are they going to use this information, what skill or competencies are expected to develop because of learning this information, what kind of higher order thinking the student will engage in, and how the student will express these achievements. The achievements should be those which are applicable, which are useful for the students as a graduate for their at their workplace, and should not be learned only because of the minor interest of the topic, which are the rare topics usually. The anatomy of the good learning outcome, it should exhibit A, B, C, and D. A is the audience, D is the behavior, C is the context for learning, and D is the degree of competencies. And usually we use the SMART criteria for developing the general learning outcomes. On successful completion of the module, you will be able to, this is one example, on successful completion of the module, you will be able to explain the mechanism of muscle contraction during movement and maintenance of posture in human body at molecular, cellular, and gross levels. Another example, elicit and accurately record the patient's medical, family, and social history, working with parents and or caretakers when the patient is a child or young person. This is from the GMC report. Now, who is the audience? You. You means the student over there. What is the behavior? Explain. You should be able to explain. What is the learning context? Mechanism. The learning requirement over there. And the degree of competency is at the molecular, cellular, and gross level. If you look at this learning outcome, you will see that it covers not only the anatomy, it also covers the functional, that is physiology, and the biochemistry of the events as well. Okay, the second example, elicit and accurately record. Over here, you will see that there are 2 learning outcomes. There are 2 verbs used to elicit and record. And to record what? The medical, the family, and the social history. The child of the child who is a young person is the degree of competence. It is very difficult to get the history from the children. So this is the degree of competency which is involved. The anatomy of the good specific or the student learning outcomes should demonstrate a behavior, standard, or condition. So this is when you are giving the outcomes for the students. On successful completion of the session, the medical student would diagnose heart arrhythmias in 90% of the affected patients in normal clinical environment using stethoscope. So you have identified all the basic criteria. He should be or she should be able to diagnose arrhythmias with 90% of accuracy. You don't expect 100% of accuracy they are doing all the time. In normal clinical environment, means OPD environment or the hospital environment, using stethoscope only. No other fancy technique is being used over there. Explain the criteria to be taken into account when caring for a patient with tuberculosis in primary healthcare setting. Explain the criteria is the behavior, What is the standard? Caring of the patient with tuberculosis in primary healthcare setting is the condition. Use one action verbs per learning outcome and keep the sentence structure simple to avoid misinterpretation. Demonstrate salient, normal and pathological features of muscle, bone and joint on radiograph, for example. The only verb used over is demonstrate. So the student should be able to show these changes on the radiograph. Avoid the use of bundle of the compound statements. For example, upon completion of the research, the student would be able to analyze and interpret data to produce meaningful conclusion and recommendation and explain statistics which has been done in that study in writing. So there are a lot of verbs which have been used, and these verbs can be split into a number of learning outcomes. The hierarchy of the learning outcomes, how the learning outcomes actually derive starting from learning objectives of the institutions, which are called as the program educational objectives, PEOs. Going to the learning outcomes of the program, which are called as the program objectives, then going to the student learning objectives, which are the phase year or the journal objectives. If you look at these three stages, you will see that the word objective is used. This is the wish list of the institute. This is the wish list of the faculty. This is the wish list of the medical school, that they want to bring in those changes, these objectives in their students. While the student learning outcomes will be coming from the course, subject, module or unit learning outcomes, commonly called as the CLOs, or the topic learning outcomes, which is for each topic which is delivered to the students. The last two ones, the course learning outcomes and the student topic learning outcomes, are those two things which are known to the students. The remaining three documents of the PEOs, POs and the phase and the general objectives, student might not be even aware of the existence of these documents. But these are very important documents for the accreditation reason and to show to the stakeholders what are the achievement targets. So generally the curriculum is designed backwards, starting from the learning objectives of the institution, going back to the student learning outcomes, but it is delivered forward from the student topic learning outcomes, going back to the objectives, the program educational objectives. What are these? I'm going to discuss in a while. The program educational objectives are the broad statement that describe what the graduate are expected to attain few years after graduation. So although they have left the institution, say about 4 to 5 years ago, where do you want to see them? And how do you know them? That means that how are you going to follow these students? The good institutes always follows their graduates through their mentor-mentee system or by direct having the alumni contact with them. So we should be able to follow our students, what they are doing 4 to 5 years after graduation. These are the broad goals that address institutional and program mission statements and are responsive to the expressed interest of the program stakeholders. So the stakeholders would know exactly what the student of this university or this institutes are doing 4 to 5 years for the medical program. This 4 to 5 years varies with the different type of programs. For example, for the engineering, because the engineering course is a smaller one, it is completed in 3 years. So usually you can assess the PEOs 3 years after the graduation. They are just 4 to 5 broad statement that describes the career and professional accomplishment of the program in 4 to 5 years. Okay. Now, if the university wants the graduates to be involved more in research activities, for example, then in the program there should be a lot of opportunities given to the students to do research and to be familiar with the process of research. But if the institute wants that the graduates should be doing more like a journal practice, then those objectives, the methodologies of making them a good general physicians should be taught in the course. The program objectives, however, are the statements of the general knowledge, skills, attitudes, and abilities which the student should be able to demonstrate upon graduation. The graduates are expected to complete all these courses of the program before they graduate. And this does not mean only the academic courses. There are some non-academic courses which goes under the heading of attitudes. Each university has a specific special courses which are designed for the students, and sometimes the students might not achieve their degrees although they have completed their academic course, but they have not completed these extra courses, so they might graduate a bit later on after they have completed all these courses. So all the courses which have been designed for that medical school, including academic and non-academic activities, all should be completed before they are graduated. Generally, the program objectives are guided by the Ministry of Education, accreditation bodies, quality assurance authorities, certifying bodies, medical councils, whichever is the responsible institute in the country. They are expressed explicitly and made known to all the stakeholders, and they are expressed, they may be expressed in a non-measurable verbs because the measurement part comes later on. POs are always matched according to the teaching learning strategies and assessment. This is one example which I'm showing you on the screen. You will see that the teaching learning strategies includes the projects a lot. The reason being that this university has a very good linkage with the industry, and the student gets a lot of opportunities to go and work with the industry right from the year one up to the stage of their graduation. So the project is a very important component of involving the students with the industry at the earlier stage, and that the students are familiar how the industry works at the time of graduation. The general learning outcomes can be of the phase and the year depending upon how the curriculum is being run, the preclinical and clinical phase, or year by year. They are mapped to the learning domains of selected taxonomy for knowledge, skills, and attitudes again. Can have more than one action verbs. If the statement has two verbs from the same domain, for the assessment purpose, we will use the highest level of taxonomy for assessment. If statement has two verbs from two different domains, we should measure both. For example, this is again the example coming from the GMC document. Justify through an explanation of the underlying fundamental principles and clinical reasoning. So fundamental principle is cognitive, while the clinical reasoning comes under the attitudes. The selection of appropriate investigation for common clinical condition and diseases. If this is the learning outcome, that means that in both these attributes, the clinical reason as well as explanation, the student should be versatile in, and they should be assessed. Should align with the program objectives to suggest appropriate changes in assessment and teaching as and when required. The next in hierarchy is the course module block learning outcomes, whichever way the curriculum is being developed. They are expressed as core curriculum to be mastered, developed by the subject expert, and approved by the faculty. They are expressed in terms of measurable, observable behaviors. Each course has 4 to 6 must-know CLOs. Each course should address at least 4 to 5 POs. The first two POs, for the first one is concerned with the cognitive, and the second one is concerned with the practical skills. That almost is a part of each and every module until unless there's a very basic module which has no practicals. The remaining POs generally addressed with the attitude components of the course which have been identified and which have been prescribed actually by the ministries or the accreditation bodies. All standards and competencies are predetermined. All the teaching learning activities and assessment methods are derived from these CLOs. For example, in this one, the mapping of the CLO is done to the PO, and you will see that there the M10, 108, 10207, these are all the programs. For each program, the CLOs should be matched with the PLOs. PO1, the cognitive component will be present in all of them. The PO2 is the practical one. In the first one, there is no PO, probably it is a very basic module, the introductory module. PO3, of the remaining one, at least 2 or 3 should be addressed in each of the courses. If you look carefully in this mapping, you will see that PO7 is missing in all the modules. So when you find this flaw in the document, then you will have to find the ways of putting that PO7, which probably is the management skills or the entrepreneur skills, which has to be put into the curriculum. The topic learning outcomes, or the TLOs, are the expression of the CLOs, what the CLOs want, and for each CLO, they are determined by the faculty what to teach in that course. They are specified and well-defined to be measurable. They are realistic and attainable. They are written as action verb in future tense as accomplished upon a completion of the session. They focus on deep learning rather than on rote learning. Adequate in number, 3 to 5 for each topic. Emphasize must-know learning outcomes, and inform what they will learn during the session and what is the expected level of their performance. They are approved by the curriculum committee. This is the mapping of the TLO to a CLO. Over here, you will see that the topic is given, the teaching learning method is given, and the CLOs which will be accomplished in that are tabled. This is the normal process which is used in different medical institutes, especially in Malaysia. That will make your curriculum very, very transparent to the accrediting bodies when they will look at all those mappings, that how the curriculum is being delivered. The last section is on the learning taxonomies. We are all aware of the Bloom's taxonomy with the cognitive domain, which was first introduced in 1956 and was modified in 2003. This is the modified version. It starts from the remembering and understanding, which is called as the lower order thinking. Usually this part of the component is delivered during the very, very early phase of the curriculum. And mainly it involves rote memorization and learning. While the higher order thinking, applying and analyzing and evaluating and creating, the applying and analyzing components is usually expected from the medical students on graduation, while evaluating and creating is something which will happen later after the graduation, maybe at the time of the house job or when they're working in, they're doing their post-graduation. Remembering is just to remember, we all know, and understanding is able to interpret, compare, contrast, explain the learned information, but this is all rote memorization. The applying is to apply the material or rule or concept or idea in a new situation to solve problems. Usually it is integral part of the problem-based learning sessions. And analyzing is the ability to break down the information into its component and look for ideas and interrelationship of those ideas with each other. Evaluating is the ability to make a judgment of the value of the material. That is very higher order thinking skill. And creating is the ability to combine parts to make something new. So you come up with a new treatment methodology, you can come with a new method of management of the patient. That will be the creativity which will come later on when we are very, very experienced in that. The Simpson taxonomy of the psychomotor domain, although they all come under the Bloom's taxonomy, but Bloom's has played very little role in the development of the psychomotor and the attitude component. His main work was on the cognitive part of it. The Simpson's taxonomy was introduced in 1972. It has the 7 stages over there, and this involves with the practical involvement of the students in the activity, and it involves the physical movement, coordination, motor skills, and the development of these skills with the speed, precision, and the technique they execute, the level of attainment of all these things, until unless it becomes as a natural part of their personality, they can do those with their eyes closed. Carthlow's taxonomy of affective domain was introduced in 1965. It is the affective domains which deals with emotions, enthusiasm, attitudes, and again, they are the attributes which the students have to gain during their medical schools at different levels. But the characterization and organization stage comes very much later in the development of the doctors. The Miller's Pyramid of Clinical Competence was introduced in 1990, and it is very well accepted by the clinicians because it tells us about the level of the competence of the students in the clinical years. The Solos taxonomy of structure of observed allos is utilized by some medical schools in UK. It starts from the pre-structural when the student have no idea of what the teachers are talking about, and they have those scattered concepts about it, to a unistructural when they can learn one concept in a go, multi-structure when they have learned multiple concepts but they cannot interrelate them with each other, going to the relational when they can interrelate with each other and can have some problem solving skills developed in them, going to the last stage, which is the extended abstract, in which they can combine the different concepts together and come up with create a new ideas or a new perception. So this is the Solos taxonomy, which is the structure of observed, how the allos are observed over the years of the students with increasing level of complexity. And this is being followed by few medical schools only because they are a bit difficult to evaluate for each and every student. The sixth facet of understanding by design is to see how the students understand the things, more psychological in its concept. And if you have a good understanding of the psychological theories, this type of taxonomy is very much appropriate to be applied on the students. And the last one is the taxonomy of significant learning behavioral change, which is the Fink's taxonomy. It was used a long time ago, not very much applied nowadays, but is interesting to read about it as a student of medical education. Thank you very much. Any questions?
हेलो
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
वालेकुम सलाम। अच्छा, मैं डॉक्टर शाहिद बोल रहा हूँ सियालकोट से।
जी डॉक्टर साहब।
डॉक्टर साहब एक्सीलेंट प्रेजेंटेशन, लेकिन मुझे इस बात की समझ नहीं आती कि मेडिकल एजुकेशन का जो सब्जेक्ट है
जी,
इसको याद कैसे रखा जाए इन चीज़ों को। आप भी सामने एक प्रिंट आ रहा है तो उसको पढ़ के तो बोल रहे हैं, लेकिन अगर आप इसको रिमेम्बर करना चाहें या एक जैसे चीज़ होता है आप 50 काजेज याद कर लेते हैं, लेकिन इसमें कोई आर्ट्स टाइप सब्जेक्ट है कि इसको मेमोराइज करना और इसमें फिर आप अगर असेसमेंट होती है तो टेस्ट देना या उसको, मेरे ख्याल है इट्स नॉट इजी।
you are talking about
कोई ऐसी बुक है या कोई ऐसी चीज है कि हम ये जिससे हम कुछ या कोई ऐसा मटेरियल हो तो जिस आप कोई गाइड कर सकें।
you're talking about learning medical education, not learning the medicine.
Yes, about learning medical education.
Yeah, we don't have any standardized book in this because it is a combination of so many psychological and academic and managerial and so many skills and so many components of it. Most of it you will learn by experience. As you get involved with the development of all those things in your faculty, you will understand them better. So to be a medical educationist, you have to be a member of a medical institute or a medical school, or you should be actively involved in that. Only then you will understand the different concepts. So for every country, okay, the question which is being projected is, so for every country to prepare its own curriculum, there should be a universal one in light of COVID and such occurring in future. Has China dealt better with other countries in COVID? The education is an evolving process. It changes with the new diseases which come into frontline, and we have to modify the curriculum to bring in those changes. For example, when we were in Pakistan, and when I did my medicine, there was nothing being taught about the dengue fever. But when we came to Malaysia, the dengue was the most prevalent disease over there, so we have to learn about the dengue over here. this COVID is a new emerging thing. It has to be brought into the curriculum as it is expected to stay with us for a very, very long time now. That is why in curriculum it has to be fluid. It has to be adjustable. You add one thing and you remove one thing. It is very important that when we are adding into the curriculum, we just don't keep on adding, we keep on subtracting those things which are no longer applicable. For example, there are few skills which we learn in medical schools of how the muscle twitch occurs and how the Geiger counter is done, or how the RBCs are counted on the slides and all those things. These things are most of the laboratories now, they do it with their own gadgets and they're all so much automated. What I'm trying to say over here is that according to the facilities available for each country, you have to remove some things from the curriculum to add new things. COVID-19 is a new emerging disease. It has its own implication and vast implication on not only on the patients, but the patients' families as well. So yes, it should be included in the curriculum. But then you have to remove something from the curriculum which is not that very applicable. So you must know curriculum is one fixed curriculum. From that curriculum, if you remove something, you add something, you should know what to remove from that curriculum. Otherwise, the medical education will not be completed in 5 or 6 years. It will take much, much longer than that. And also remember that the learning does not end at the five years. Many people say that learning begins at the 5 years. So after 5 years, you have to do the house job in which you are going to encounter different other problems which probably you have not learned in the medical schools, and then you will have to deal with those problems as well. So yes, COVID is a new thing, it has to be dealt with, but you have to adjust your curriculum according to the learning. Okay, the second question is, here in Pakistan, medical schools curricula are subject by experiments by some foreign forces, due to which there is uncertainty among both students and facilities. The curricula should reflect the need of the society. The curricula should reflect the need of the community in which that curriculum is being adopted. As I've given you the example of the Singapore. The Singapore is one country which has only 3 medical schools, but the 70% of that curriculum is being controlled by the Ministry of Health over there. The reason being that they have identified the priorities of the country, future priorities, which is a very futuristic. For example, the population is aging and there is a lot of aging population, and for that, what the students should know before they graduate, how to deal with those aging patients in future. So the foreign forces can guide you, can tell you the theory part of it, but the actual curriculum should be prepared and delivered by the local people. That is my opinion. You might disagree with it.
Ma'am, would you like to? Hello?
Yeah, Prof.
Yeah, ma'am, I am Professor Mufti.
Okay.
I have done medical education masters as well, and a senior teacher. My question over here is that, you see, with a very elaborate sort of explanation and giving all the various catalogs of information on the taxonomies and all that, don't you think that the present scenario of the COVID worldwide, are we not going to change our curriculum, and particularly for the clinical skills and the clinical learning, skill learning? Because that is the social distancing and all that is going to dictate us away from the millers partially. Okay.
Thank you for your question, Prof. That was suggested in my first slide, in which I said that the curriculum should be able to adjust to the changing demands and the changing requirements of the medical field. And we should all be prepared to make those adjustments in the curriculum so that it remains viable and it remains useful for the future generations. There is no doubt that with COVID and many other diseases which are coming back because of different reasons, the new emerging diseases, the curriculum has to modify. And this is the responsibility, I think, of the institution, that they keep on changing, they keep on looking at their curriculum, and they do the curriculum review at regular intervals. Curriculum is not something which you can change every day, that today there is one thing come and you remove this thing and add new thing, then the curriculum will become very hodgepodge. But looking at the requirement of the day, you have to think of what changes you can bring into that. The delivery of your teaching learning methods, the method of assessment of the students. I hope the student of this situation of social distancing is not a very long-term thing, but if it is a long-term, then we have to adjust for a short-term curriculum changes and for a long-term curriculum changes. Yes, we have to. Programs should have rather than objectives. Yes. Yes, if you are looking for the futuristic curriculum, the objectives is the teacher's wish list, and if you follow the teacher's wish list, this is a never-ending wish list. It is very difficult to control the teachers to teach, especially when we have, if we have only the PhD qualified teachers. They love their subject so much that they want to deliver everything to the students, which is not the requirement of the medical students. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to produce the anatomist or the biochemist or the pathologist like that. We want to develop a general medical practitioner. We want to produce a safe doctor who will be able to perform his job well as a house job. So for that purpose, our learning outcomes should be adjusted or triggered towards that situation.
Yes, may I ask a question, please?
Yes, just let me finish this list of questions. Maybe your question is in that, Ambreen.
Okay, thank you.
I'm still not clear about differences between learning objectives and learning outcomes. Can you give example of both related to same topic? Like if you want students to learn about anatomy of heart. The main difference between the learning objectives and the learning outcome is what the teacher intends and what the student should be doing it. The learning objectives is the teacher's wish that they are going to teach them this in that. While the outcome is what the students need to learn at the end of the day, and they should learn it as a safe medical doctor. For example, if you talk about the anatomy of the heart as an example, you should think that the information which you are giving about the heart to the student, how are they going to remember I've given you a few questions you should ask. How are the students going to use that information? What is the advantage of learning about these things? For example, you tell the students you should learn about the papillary muscles and the chordae tendineae. Why they should learn about the papillary muscle and chordae tendineae? Because they are involved with the functioning of the valves of the heart, and the problem of the valves of the heart will affect the function of the heart. So if the students correlate these things, your learning objectives are such that they demonstrate that correlation to the students, that will be the learning outcomes. While learning objective is that you go and teach to them all those things without telling them what is the significance of that. That is because you want to deliver all you know about the knowledge component of it. So knowledge, skills, and attitudes, when they are integrated and they're delivered in a form that the students understands the significance of it, that will be the learning outcome. While learning objective is what I want to teach to the students, what is my desire to give to the students. So that is the main.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me. And regarding this, ma'am, my question is, like, usually we write learning objective, like at the end of module, the student will be able to describe the structure or whatever, like how many chambers heart have. Like, so what's the difference between outcome and chamber? Because in that we also we write again the same thing, that at the end of the module, student will be able to do this, and in outcomes you are telling me the same things. So then what's the difference in between writing the learning objective and the learning outcome?
In learning objectives, you will write at the end of the students are able to do this. Okay, this is my wish list.
Yes.
Okay, the first thing is in the attitude. This is my wish list. But in the B, you will write the students would be able to. Means this is the student's responsibility now that they would be able to do that.
It's just the replacement of will with would.
Not only the can be to would, it is also in the context of it, the context of the learning will be that the student should know the more applicable part of it, that how they're going to apply this information to the context. That is what I'm saying. Your outcomes should not be only on the anatomy or the physiology or the biochemistry. They should be the integrated ones.
But it is in both cases. Like in when we write learning objective, we keep this thing in mind that should be integrated. And in the same, when we write the outcome, I'm actually a bit confused because in our study guides or in our coursework, when we write learning objective, these are almost same what you are telling about the learning outcome. I'm still confused when we are writing outcome, how it will be different to write when we write about the learning objective.
The learning outcomes, when you write, the students should be able to do that. Yeah. There is no shortcut to that. Yeah. When they're able to do that, you are going to assess them on that.
Yes.
There is no shortcut to that.
Right.
And only when the students are able to perform all those things which is in the learning outcomes, the student will graduate.
Okay.
While in your learning objectives, you have sent, you will say a broad statement, the student should know the anatomy of the heart. What in the anatomy of the heart they actually should know and how they are going to put that knowledge into context is not mentioned in the objectives, while that is put in context in the outcomes.
So outcomes are more detailed as compared to the objectives.
More detailed and more specific. They are more specific. More specific.
Madam, I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Ma'am, actually, I have one more question related to this. Like, if in an institution where the board of assessment is like 100% students are assessed on the basis of 100% MCQs, and in another institution where the students are assessed on the basis of 50% or 40% MCQs and 60% MCQs, will there be any difference in writing a learning objective in both cases?
The assessment system is reflective of the way you are teaching them. If you are teaching them the learning outcomes, then your assessment should be on those outcomes. The MCQs true false types are more on the rote memorization. That means that students should learn it, whether they have understood it or not, it doesn't matter. They will memorize it and they will get the marks for that. But when you are going to write the learning outcomes, and your questions then will be on the OBA type, the best answer type, then the student will think about it and will come up with the conclusion, analyzing all those information which you are giving in the scenario. So it will be in context to the patient's problem. It should not be coming out just from the lecture which you have delivered on the heart, for example. For example, we have taught the student about the interior surface of the heart, what are the chambers which are related to the interior surface of the heart. Instead of asking a straight question of the interior surface of the heart comprises of the right ventricle, the left ventricle, the right atrium, blah blah, you can ask that there is an injury at which level and which ventricle is involved in that injury. Or about the blood vessels, there is a embolism in the interior interventricular branch of the heart. So which part of the heart will be affected? Instead of asking the rote memorization, the learning should be on an outcome, but actually this information is going to help the students in the future. So when the patient comes with myocardial infarction, they would know exactly if this blood vessel is affected, what will be the effect of that infarct on the functioning of the heart, and which part will be affected.
So it's mean, ma'am, the learning objective will remain same if we ask about that particular topic in MCQ or SEQ. The learning outcome will remain same.
No. Learning outcome is practically the skills which you have identified for the students to do a skill. You need to have a knowledge as well. So practically, if you look at the way the learning outcomes are written, the learning outcomes are as what the students will be able to do, will be able to perform at
Who you tell like me? Don't pop like that.
Excuse me.
Pop like that.
Okay. Do you recommend that learning outcomes for the medical graduate should be declared at national level? There should be. If you ask my opinion, there should be specified learning outcomes for example, like under University of Health Sciences, there are a number of medical schools, all should be following the same learning outcomes. And I like the Singapore approach in which 70% of those outcomes are given by the ministry, while the remaining 30% are the exotic ones which each institute wants to have its own niche areas in which they want to develop the students. For example, university has the vision that they want to produce more researchers. So some learning outcomes will be from the researching side, which will be more for that curriculum. Yes, there should be a standardized learning outcomes for each institute. But for that purpose, all the public and the private universities have to sit together and come up with the same standard, keeping in view the standard of their students as well, because with varying level of students in different institutes, probably it will be difficult to implement a very holistic curriculum. Our curriculum, we are following Bloom taxonomy and Miller's triangle. Is it enough, or we need to add more on Carthalos? The Bloom taxonomy, this question is that whether the Bloom taxonomy is only enough, or should we have the Simpson and the Carthalos? We have to. You have to have the complete Bloom taxonomies on the cognitive, psychomotor and attitude components. The psychomotor will be covered by the Simpsons and the Carthalos. So you have to have all those three components, and you have to know at which level of competence your students are going to achieve, which level of competence your students are going to achieve at the time of the graduation. Yes, so you have to follow those. The remaining few, the exotic ones, were those which are according to the more psychological behavior. If you're interested in psychology and you want to see how the student understands, those are the ones which are good for that purpose. Can the COVID-19 topic be introduced as an emergency reform to the curriculum? There shouldn't be any emergency reform. You are reviewing your curriculum, and you can add COVID into it. Already many schools in Malaysia have already started teaching COVID. You need to take the approval of those respective bodies in your institute, the curricular committee or the faculty committee or the higher committees in the deanery level, or in anybody. Just take their permission, and yes, you have to introduce it, because it's a common problem, and the students should be able to understand all those things. Yes, you can add those topics on need basis. The number of LOs depends upon duration of educational activity. No, the number of LO are not very many. The duration of an activity is not more than 2 hours. Your lecture is 1 hour, your practical is 2 hours, the CBL is 2 hours, the bedside teaching is 2 hours, the TBL is 2 hours. So usually the timing for each activity is identified. For each hour of activity of the students, you have to give them some time to do the self-study. So make sure that whatever you are doing, it falls into the normal credit hour calculation for the faculty or for the university, because it is very important that we are not burdening the students after the working hours, how much time they are going to spend in the medical education. Usually for the medical education, we think that the students should be studying all the time. That wouldn't help in their holistic development. So they should have the time for other activities as well, and the curriculum should be flexible in amount that they can adjust to these requirements accordingly. How to remember so many acronyms and abbreviations in, I'm sorry, you have to come up with like how we remember the anatomy. You can have your own formulas for that. Remember in anatomy we used to learn those things by making all those stupid sentences and coming up with the picking the first word of all that and remembering them. So yeah, you have to be more innovative and creative. That indicates our curriculum knowledge and skills and attitude should be prepared with the remembering and understanding level. No. The remembering and understanding level will come if you start developing your curriculum at the level 3 and level 4 analysis and application. The remembering, say when you develop your learning out, you cannot say understand and explain, understand and analyze, and understand and interpret. When you say understand, when you say interpret, the understanding is already should be there to interpret. When you say analyze, the understanding is always over there to analyze that situation. So the selection of the verb should be of the highest level. The first two levels are automatically learned in the process. They are not the things which practically you have to really reinforce on the students. For example, when you are telling it about the applied anatomy of the heart, which is more important for the students to know than the normal structure of heart. The normal structure of heart those applied anatomy will make the student to understand and go and read about the normal structure of the heart. That is not something for you to teach in the class. For example, I remember when I was a medical student, nobody taught us about the general anatomy. We used to sit in the dissection hall and we used to do the dissection, and that is all we read through the dissectors or the Gray's Anatomy, whichever we thought was more feasible. Will there be any change, if there is any change in mode of assessment, like LOs in institute where 100% MCQs are asked and 40% SCQs are? The assessment system should be a mixture of number of assessment methods. It should be covering all the basic skills, knowledge and attitudes which are teaching to the hospital, to the students in one form or another. So in the earlier phase, for example, in the preclinical phase, if you're still following that old method of curriculum in which you are teaching the basic sciences first and then you are going to the clinical sciences in the clinical years, the questions will be more on the objective type of questions. To know their understanding, you have to introduce some SCQs as well over there. But as the student move towards the clinical side, then the questions will be more on the MEQs type, for example. The questions will be more on the bedside teaching, so they will be more on the face-to-face type of assessment methods. Any more questions? No. Okay, that is all from the question side. Anybody wants to ask anything else?
Yes, I would want to ask something. I'm Dr. Amreen Usmani, and I'm from College of Physicians and Surgeons, as well as from Peria University. I'm an anatomist, and I can see maybe you're an anatomist also. Now, you know, people are shifting from objective writing and outcome writing to competency-based education.
Yeah.
So mostly we are encouraged to write competency-based outcomes. So in basic sciences, how can we apply that? Because in basic sciences, it is very difficult to identify competencies.
If the institute is going towards a competency-based education, then there is no basic sciences and no clinical sciences. You have clinical scenarios, you have clinical cases, and everything is learned at one go, like in the PBLs, like in the case-based learnings. So you are not teaching them all of these things in segregation. Like when we went for the integrated curriculum, the CVS is taught, and in this CVS, the anatomy, physiology, pathology, microbiology, community medicine, clinical scenarios, all were taught in one go. So it is a combination of all that. your questions in your LOs should address all of them in combination. You get the point. So that means that the student should be competent in something. The student should be competent in identifying the cardiac arrhythmias, for example. To identify the cardiac arrhythmias, you have to know the functioning of the valve. So that is the physiology component. They have to know about the anatomy of the valve. That is the component of it. So all these things will be the part of the TLOs. For that competence, that will be the part of TLOs, and in TLO what we are going to teach
them. And you have very beautifully, yes,
sorry.
you've very beautifully divided objectives and outcomes into two domains, whereas a lot of researchers say that they're one of the same things. So I mean, there is a lot of confusion, and a lot of students and a lot of faculty ask us the same questions, because researchers and then what we say kind of contradict each other's. And the examples that you gave of objectives and outcomes, they were kind of overlapping each other. So do you still think there are a little bit of overlap between the two?
Amreen, the only thing to remember is that outcomes is what we expect from the students to achieve. You might teach them, you might not teach them. It is not necessary that whatever the learning outcomes have been identified, all of them are taught by the teachers. No. For example, you are teaching them at the higher level, but the lower level things the students should learn by themselves. You have to inform the student, in session, I am going to cover these learning outcomes. These are the ones which you have to do it by yourself. So the must-know topic and the good-know topics, they should also be identified. The learning outcomes deals with the must-know topics. Every student should know at the end of the day to pass the examination, to reach to that standard.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now Prof. Alamsher Malik will have a chat with you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Oksana. There were some really kind of difficult questions which she was able to handle, I think, quite adequately. Now, I have just two slides to show you about what we are planning to do in future. But in the meantime, if you have some questions which you think you were not able to ask, or you think you didn't get the answer to your satisfaction, we can you can write in the chat box with your contact, and we can answer that in writing. Now, this is the announcement for our next webinar, which would be delivering the integrated curriculum online. And this would be on 20th of September, and timing would be the same. So delivering integrated curriculum online. And as usual, I'll make this appeal again, that may I propose to each participant to donate $1 USD or equivalent amount in your local currency to any deserving individual in your neighborhood, or any public welfare organization in your community after attending every webinar conducted from this platform. Right, with that, we come to an end to this session, and inshallah we'll see you in about a month's time. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jazakallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much.